Yeah, Taoiseach, look, the fact is that the market is proving incapable of delivering affordability for houses to buy or to rent for huge swathes of young and working people. That's the reality. There has been an uptick in social housing delivery, not enough, but we're beginning to see some progress. Not least because you adopted a proposal we put to you, which was to start buying some of the houses that are coming, that the market is delivering, but are too expensive, and delivering them as social housing. On affordable housing, as one of your own deputies has just told you, we are way, way down the line. To repeat, in my own area, last year, 0 affordable houses delivered. Cost rental or affordable. And if you think about our planning laws, we get 10% social, 10% affordable on some. What does that mean? It means 80% of what the market is delivering is unaffordable, to the vast majority. Now, I honestly, genuinely ask, what is the point in building unaffordable housing? Because the only people who can buy it are very rich people or investment funds, who then buy it and charge extortionate rents. So we have to do something about this, Taoiseach, and we have to do it urgently. And if you're serious about looking for ideas, and I acknowledge you have taken on some of the suggestions we have made in certain regards, I ask that we have a serious discussion where you listen to some of the suggestions we have about how we can deliver more. But it seems to me we should be following what they're doing in places like Vienna, where it is basically the policy that 50 to 60% of all housing that is delivered has to be social or affordable. Because what is the point otherwise?
Thank you, Cearlach. Deputy Durkin raised the issue of institutional investors, and I want to say the government absolutely recognises the need for protections to prevent institutional investors displacing owner-occupiers. For this reason, we introduced tax and planning changes to protect traditional family houses from bulk purchase. These include changes that were introduced in May 2021 to the rate of stamp duty on bulk purchases. A 10% stamp duty levy was introduced by government for the cumulative purchase of 10 or more residential houses in a 12-month period. And also Section 28 guidelines for planning authorities provide for an owner-occupier guarantee, preventing multiple units being sold to a single buyer in new estates, although of course this doesn't apply retrospectively to permissions granted before 2021. About 40,000 homes have received planning permission with conditions attached to them prohibiting bulk purchase or multiple sale to a single purchaser since that law was brought in, and we are considering further measures. We believe the role for institutional investors is to finance new housing developments that otherwise wouldn't be built, not to buy up existing ones when people had a legitimate expectation that they may be able to buy them themselves. Deputy Dillon raised the issue of affordable housing schemes in Mayo, and I agree that we need to have a mix of affordable housing schemes and social housing schemes. It shouldn't just be social housing. The arguments made in the past is that in some counties where affordability is better than others, that they don't need these schemes. I don't agree with that view. I think every county should have at least one scheme. But I would also point out that there are other ways to achieve affordability than affordable housing schemes. Help to Buy does it by helping people to afford their deposit, and the First Home scheme can close the gap between what somebody gets in terms of mortgage approval and the cost of building a new home. In terms of affordability, I think there are lots of ways that we can achieve it. Social housing is clearly one. As I said before, benefits everyone, takes people off the housing list, frees up properties for other people to rent, has a downward dampening effect on house prices, and that's why we're building more social housing now than at any point since the 1970s. And deputies might be interested to know that if you compare 2022 census with the census 10 years ago, there are 40,000 more families in social housing than was the case back in 2011, and the percentage of people living in social housing is now higher than it was 10 years ago. And I think that shows how committed this government and previous governments in the past 10 years have been to social housing. We're also trying to reduce the cost of building homes by waiving development levies, by servicing more land, by reducing the cost of finance, by focusing on vacancy, and also on Help to Buy. And let's never forget that what Help to Buy is. This is tax that people have already paid. It's their own tax they're getting back. and they can put it towards their deposit. And I think it'd be a terrible thing if that was taken away. On the Vienna model, Vienna's a great city, been there many times, love the place, but there are merits and demerits to its housing model. And one of the things people in Vienna tell me is that because there's such a focus on public housing, it's very hard to own your own home in Vienna. And in fact, home ownership rates in Austria are among the lowest in Europe and are lower than they are in Ireland. And I'm not sure if that's the model. I'm not sure that's the model that people want in Ireland, where people are less likely to own their own home and are in public housing for life, no matter how good and secure it may be. In terms of vacancy, I think we all appreciate that there'll always be some level of vacancy, but there's still too much of it. It's still too common, even though vacancy rates are falling. And I agree with Deputy Barry that local authorities need to be more assertive and more proactive in what they do in terms of vacancy. Some are better than others. I think Waterford's a very good example of a local authority that is particularly active when it comes to vacancy, and other local authorities could learn from that. As a government, we're adopting a carrot and stick approach. We have €150 million now available to local authorities to purchase derelict properties and bring them back into use. They can buy the property, sell it on, use the money again to buy another property, really encouraging local authorities to do that. They have CPO powers, which aren't used enough in my view. There's a derelict site levy, which they're often too slow to impose. There's the vacant property tax as well, and there's also grants now available to individuals to renovate properties and bring them back into use. Over 3,000 of those approved, and the drawdown is picking up. Finally, just on the issue of a social housing passport raised by Deputy Sullivan, I'll have to come back to him on that issue. I think it's a good idea, particularly where people are moving back to their home county, that they would carry their years, if you like, with them. One thing we just would need to guard against is people being on multiple lists, because that can create all sorts of difficulties if people are on housing lists in several different authorities. On the land registry issue, I'm afraid I don't have any information for Deputy Tobin on that, but there are lots of options available to people, people who are still in financial distress from the crash 12, 13 years ago. Mortgage to rent is one option, personal solvency is another option, and I'd certainly say to anyone to get good legal advice and good financial advice on their options. And then on the Housing Adaptation Grant, Mr. Donald actually made a statement on that earlier in the Dáil today, which I think is probably a more up-to-date response than I can give.